Buenos tardes, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a motherfucking bad habit. Bye bye. Spitting dog hair everywhere. Fucking little motherfuckers go crazy, man. Have you ever had a puppy? Well, if you ever had, don't get one. Right? I'm just going to say, motherfuckers do too much. Anyways, with that being said, let's get to the motherfucking intro. Welcome back to Gunners Collective TV, and if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I am kicking. I appreciate all the support, and I'm very humbled by it. Thank you. So Cesar, Pan, Little Caesars, right? Caesar Hernandez, the man that's on the run in Mexico, the Delano escapee, the cop killer, allegedly. There's a lot more coming out, a lot more to the story. And, I was thinking of similar cases of people being on the run. Having been on the run in Mexico, I could give you a firsthand account of just the bullshit that you have to go through. Now, not everyone's the same, though. Don't get it twisted. Some people have better connections than others. And I've been hearing that Caesar Hernandez definitely has a little bit more connections than everyone else, right? When it comes to the way he's wiggling in Mexico. But at the end of the day, that's his business and not for me to share. But one thing I will say for sure is I thought of myself being on the run, and in comparison to him, I said there is no comparison. I went to a family member's home. I was not wanted there. My grandfather definitely did not want me there, did not want my homeboys there. And at the end of the day, he told us as much, right? We were bringing a lot of drama to a place where he was just living day to day, and we were trying to live beyond our means without having any money. If I didn't have my old lady at the time sending me money, Western Union, looking out for me, then we would have all been broke. We'd all been broker than where's he at? This way? That way? Baby Joker, right? We'd have been broker than him. Now, upon thinking about Baby Joker, I thought of a similar situation to Caesar Hernandez. Baby Joker, for those of you that don't know, was a well-connected, very well-known prison gang member, right? As well as street gang member from Watsonville, who found himself in the midst of 3 murders, right? Under investigation for 3. He would ultimately be convicted of one of them. And he went on the run to Mexico as well. And in similar fashion, man, he had the feds. He had a lot of different people looking for him. The difference between him and Caesar Hernandez was this man was caught. This man was caught pretty fast, right? He went to Mexico and, he started to blend in. He went all the way down to Michoacan, deeper into Mexico than Caesar Hernandez did, just going over the border into TJ. And whatever connections that Baby Joker had, he utilized that. The difference between him and Caesar Hernandez is he continued to gangbang. See, I don't think Caesar Hernandez even cares about the gang, his association with it, the Los Angeles area, or anything like that. I think he's more about self-preservation and just staying free and doing whatever the fuck he has to do to maintain that freedom. And I understand. I respect it. I respect it at the end of the day. I'm not one of those people who push, man, go out there and kill everyone and be selfish. But at the same time, man, that dude's doing whatever it takes to maintain, right? Whatever it takes. Now, as far as Baby Joker pretty much did the same thing in the beginning, but he got very comfortable. That's the last thing you do. And because he got comfortable, what happened was he started to continue to associate with past gang members, with his barrio, with his neighborhood, with people from his prison organization. And in doing so, he found out ways to hustle through Mexico, through California, and to continue to, be involved in street gang regiments, in prison gangs and all that. And all that did was get him hemmed up. Now he's functioning on the SNY yards in the California prison system. He went from one of the most notoriously known Norteño street gang members to a prison gang member of status to ultimately hanging out on the SNY yard with all the dudes that are bamboozled. You know, and it's crazy the twists and turns that his life took, because I'll tell you right now, ever since the Youth Authority, Baby Joker was very well respected coming from Watsonville. Watsonville is a very respected city in Northern California, not a very big town, not big at all, but has always had its respect, has always had its fame. You know, when it comes to Northern California, they are a city not to be played with. They're very well indoctrinated and educated. That's how Watson has always been, and I respect that city, period. There's only one little cat out there from Watson that I don't like. Other than that, everyone else is cool. I've done a lot of time with dudes from Watson, Baby Joker's neighborhood, dudes from City Hall, dudes from fucking all the different gangs in Watson, Northside Watson, all that. And they've always been pretty solid, pretty well respected. Now, in Baby Joker's case, he went out to Mexico on the run. And because he was still functioning as a Norteño, and because he was still willing and dealing with the same cast of characters and individuals, he got caught up. He got told on. He got gave up, and they sent a federal squad in on him, and they snatched him up. He was arrested, ultimately brought back, extradited to California. He stood trial for the one murder. He was under suspicion for 3 and got convicted. Went into the California prison system, still functioning as a gang member, or, you know, an organized prison from an organization. We'll just say that. I don't want to really speak on what organization he was from. Those that know. And he got there, and he found himself on the wrong end of an argument, on the wrong end of where his loyalties lie. Now, when he got there, there was a lot of turmoil going on within that organization, you know, of state battling the feds. You had dudes from the feds that were wanting to run the show, dudes from the state that ultimately were running the show in the state at the time, and both had a fucking pretty valid argument. And at the end of the day, because Baby Joker was choosing one side over the other, his loyalty was tested in the state, and he was whacked and removed from the general population yard. Now, it's dudes like this that people say, oh, he's a piece of shit, he's no good. He didn't check in. He didn't ask to be put on another yard. He was removed. You know, he was removed just based solely on he couldn't be trusted. And the guys at the time felt like he posed a big threat because he had a lot of influence. Baby Joker had a lot of influence throughout Northern California. That's a fact. Now his influence isn't as vast. Now, because he's on the SNY yards functioning with who he's functioning with, he's a thing of the past, right? But there's no denying who Oscar Cabrera was. Baby Joker was a validated, real-life soldado for the Northern cause in the state of California. But I say that to say this. With Caesar Hernandez, I seen someone put out a short. They put Southsider, LA Southsiders doing this, LA South. Basically, they were trying to put the Southside tag on it. I don't think this guy is tripping off of gangs. I don't think this guy is worried about what gang he's from. I think this guy went to Mexico, devised a plan, got connected in with the people he needed to be connected in with in Mexico, and has a contingency plan. You know, there's a lot of people that are speculating right now. In fact, I just got a DM from someone speculating that this guy is no longer has oxygen in his lungs. I don't know that to be the case. One thing I know for sure is the person who he is responsible for killing in Mexico was a very well-respected police officer. She actually was part of a group of a squad called the Gringo Hunters. Now, for those that don't know what the word gringo is, for the white people out there, brother, that's what it means. It means wood, right? It means a white person. And the reason why she was part of this task force is they were assembled to literally go and look for and apprehend fugitives from California that were Americans that decided to go to Mexico to hide out. See, all my life, I've always been told, mijo, from my tios that are in Mexico, if you ever get caught up in any mix, you already know where to come. We got the rancho, we got a gang of bulls, and sabes que you can milk cows for a living. No, and hell no, right? That's always been me. But I always understood that I had a place to go. And that's why when I was on the run, I took them up on that. I didn't necessarily go to the rancho in Zacatecas, but I did pull up to the palace right there in Anapra in Juarez. And that's a fact, right? Me and a few other homeboys that were on the run for various crimes, we pulled up, we laid our head for a little while, and then I realized that it wasn't the place to be, because even more beyond in Mexico than being on the run and being a fugitive and not having money and not having too many places to wiggle, you have to worry about other things, especially if you're a gang member from California. First of all, they don't really care for too many gang members from California, certain groups in Mexico. Your gang don't mean shit to them. They got what they got going on, and either you're going to get with the program or you're going to get done by the program, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a Sureño, a Southsider, or a Norteño, or whatever. There are pockets and there are Northerners and Southerners that have been deported, that have set up shop. There are like NOR records, and there's a gang of Southsiders that are there in certain parts of Mexico. And yeah, you can adapt, you can go show love, you can get respect and all that. But ultimately, the further you go into Mexico, it's not about gangs anymore. It's about organizations and crime families and cartels and things of that nature. So whatever little gang you're pushing or narrative doesn't matter. Baby Joker was still adapting and recognized as a Norteño or a prison organization gang member, and because he was willing and dealing with the same cats, he got bad results. Now with Caesar Hernandez, when I seen this short of this guy saying, "Oh, he's an LA gang member," I don't know what gang this dude is from. Yes, he's from LA. He got convicted up out of Los Angeles, so yes, I'm sure he was probably a gang member. He was involved, but I don't think that's what he's pushing. What he's pushing is to get away, to stay gone, to stay on the run. And it's a hard life being on the run, man. I've done it. And like I said in my other videos, nobody wants you around. Nobody is looking out for you. Quick story, trip out on this. I had a solid homeboy. Solid, right? Someone who I went to, the very first time I ever went to juvenile hall, he was in there. I've known him since the first time I ever got locked up. Just a solid homeboy. Whole family's involved from the barrio. Old lady was fucking with the business. Everybody was with the business. I thought this dude, he was in the mix pretty heavy. And he was one of those homeboys when we called a junta or something, he was always involved. Like he definitely was in the hierarchy of our neighborhood, right? I was right alongside him. And we were good friends. And I would never expect this from him. But because he was in the dope game, he was always very, very quiet with the shit. Like everyone knew what he was doing and he had clientele and they knew what he was doing. But at the end of the day, he never really tried to have a lot of people at his pad or put his shit out there, even though everyone knew what it was. He was smart. He was smart in what he was doing. He only trusted very few. So anytime we would come around on some gangbanging shit or anything, he would, even though he was still active, he was in the mix, he'd be like, "Hey, homie, you guys need to get the fuck up out of front of my porch, homie, with that bullshit because you're drawing negative attention. This is where my family lays their head." And we respected it. You got to. Especially when he's a family man. Hey, he might be a homeboy and doing his thing. And yes, there are expectations when you're from a barrio. Yes, you do have to participate to a certain level. That's how it was, at least for us. At the end of the day, we will respect your family and your home. And so I never went over there with the drama or the bullshit because besides the respect part, he was my friend. And I knew enough to not go over there and fuck his shit up. But when I went on the run, I expected to cash in the favors that I had once gave him. There was some expectations there between me and him. There was times that I had looked out when he was doing dirt bad. There was things that I needed while on the run, and I wasn't asking for much. I was asking for a fucking jacket, a sweater, maybe a few $100s. You know what I'm saying? Let me use your phone, things like that. And instead of getting that, what I got was the cops called on me and sent to my location. Now, just like Caesar Hernandez, I was able to wiggle this one time. But I knew exactly who did it because I watched the motherfucker. I was at the next door neighbor's house, and I watched him through the mini blinds, him and his old lady looking at me when the cops tried to snatch me. But I was too swift on my toes to be caught up with those hoes. Now, I didn't focus. I've always known that he's the one that told on me. I actually got the paperwork when I was arrested that said CI this and CI that, said CI told you so, right? So I always knew, but I never pressed the issue. I never smutted him up in the hood. I never did any of that because at the end of the day, hey, all bullshit rises to the surface, and I knew eventually he would fuck up again, and better them than me. Let them deal with them. I wasn't willing and able to deal with it. Hey, he thought I was someone he wasn't. He wasn't. I pulled up to the homegirl's pad right next to his pad, went and knocked on his door to see if I could borrow a sweater and get a little money. That motherfucker's old lady came to the door like, "Oh, he ain't here right now." I seen that motherfucker in the garage earlier, right, when I passed by, but whatever. I went to the homegirl's house. 3 minutes later, task force at the front door. I was able to wiggle out the back, and I seen him through the mini blinds looking. So I knew what it was. They called on me because he didn't want me. That was too hot, right? So I understand where Caesar Hernandez is coming from being on the run. The world is against him right now. He doesn't know who to turn to. Now, if he's associated or affiliated with anyone, which I may think he is, and I'm going to give you guys the reasons why. First of all, the area he was staying in. First of all, to be living this long, he had to have some type of money. He had to have some type of support. And also, if you've seen the video of him getting away from the scene and situation, he was in boxers running down the street. He went to a specific vehicle, which he already had getaway clothes. He already had stuff stashed to get away. This guy is a very smooth, calculated, and smart individual. He's not your average everyday gangster or thug or criminal. This guy's he's pre-planned some shit, you know? Whereas in Baby Joker, yes, he was a very intelligent individual. You don't get to where you are in the status you are in the prison gang organizations or any of that without having a little bit of fucking Glecha, right? But at the end of the day, he let his old idealisms um, overcome him, and that was his downfall. Fucking with the same dudes, he ended up fucking with someone's old lady, and the story gets real deep, right? If you actually want to hear Baby Joker's story, I know they made a movie. They made a movie about him. I think it's a TV show. And go tap in. His name's Oscar Cabrera, Baby Joker. Google it, and you can hear his whole story. Ultimately, he was caught by the feds in Mexico for being on the run for a murder. And he's since been tried, convicted, and now is on an SNY yard. And it gets way deep. And I could one day maybe do a profile on Joker if I haven't yet. And he's someone who I was in YA with back in the days. I was in Fred C. Nellis with him. We crossed paths one time. We were very young, and that was that. But he's a solid dude. You know, I've always respected him. I've always known him to be a hitter and a real one. Now, with Caesar Hernandez, it's not about gangs. I don't think he's going to come to these same conclusions and make the same mistakes. I think this guy, who he's dealing with, could be his downfall. And let me explain to you. And it's not his street gang in LA. It's not his vodka. It's none of that. It's more so what he just did. Now, let's fast forward to the Mexican lady, the cop from the Gringo Task Force, right? The Gringo Hunters. She was very, very well respected and loved by her group. You know, someone who's that high ranking and has that much notoriety in law enforcement, if you take their lives, they're not going to stop. They're going to push hell and high water. They're going to push every rock looking for you. Okay, especially when you made him look bad by getting away the way you did. Now, of course, he might have had a little bit of help. He might be able to, there's some people supporting him. But that right there causes a lot of tension. And it's just like a prison yard. You know, when you fuck up on the yard and say you disrespect a canine, which is a CO, or you disrespect a free staff or something, and you draw negative attention to you and your people, and next thing you know, cells are getting hit, people are getting fucked with, people are getting snatched up, phones are getting snatched, dope's getting caught in assholes, knives are getting discovered on yards, and your people are on lockdown. Well, there's going to be motherfucking questions to be answered. They're going to want to understand and know why you were disrespecting that canine in the first place, and you better have a good excuse. Because if you don't, guess who's going to get a knife pushed through their skull? Yep. You said it. I did it. You. Right? Because you drew negative attention. And it's crazy because it's a two-way street, two-edged sword. You know, you're not supposed to take shit from anyone. You're supposed to be respected. As a man, you're supposed to be respected by everyone. Doesn't matter if they're law enforcement, anyone, you got to demand your respect, right? But in doing so, if they feel disrespected and they are of authority and they decide to rain hell on you and your people because of what you did, and that's usually the recipe. That's what they'll do. You fuck up, so they fuck with everyone. That's kind of like when I was in the youth authority. You know, North and South, we'd get into a riot and the blacks, the whites, the Asians, the paisas, everybody had to go along on lockdown or freeze with us. And that was their way of basically putting us on Front Street. Yeah, if these Mexicans weren't fucking up, the blacks wouldn't be on lockdown. Blacks would be upset, and that caused tension. And next thing you know, we're having riots and things like that. So this is the way law enforcement works. With this guy, they're going to turn every stone. They're going to harass anyone who's doing anything, looking for him, thinking that they're participating and helping him or assisting him in some type of way. And that in itself could bring negative attention and can bring some, I guess, hatred towards this man. Again, the similarities between Baby Joker and Cesar Hernandez are that they both went to Mexico. Both were California street gang members. Both were, you know, one was on the run for murder. He ultimately got convicted. One was already convicted of murder. And I could see whereas in Baby Joker was able to, he was a little bit smarter in that he went all the way down deeper into Mexico to try to hide out, whereas Cesar stood right over the border. But again, we don't know who he's connected with or why he did that. There's a lot of people, oh, that was dumb, or he should have did this. It's always woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, but unless you're in his position, which nobody that's watching this wants to be at all, we don't know. You know, I've heard a lot of different stories lately. And one I could ultimately tell you is he was able to get away, but for how long? The clock is ticking. I said on my live 48 hours, we're coming up on that time, you know, and I just heard something that was like, whoa, you know, maybe this guy might be here. Maybe he might be there. I don't know. Again, people speculate and say a lot of shit. I'm not pushing. There was a guy that said, hey, Gunner, are you pushing to get this guy caught? I'm not pushing to get this guy caught. Not at all. You know, he's going to do what he does, and more power to him. Many blessings. But also, the only thing I don't want to see is him keep doing the destructive things, violence and killing people. You know, did that officer deserve to be killed? She was doing her job. She got killed in the line of duty. I'm sure her family will be compensated. But at the end of the day, she was a young woman, man, that had an idea and was trying to help her country and her people, and ultimately paid the price. She ran into the wrong American. Gringo hunting, she ran into the wrong gringo, right? That just is what it is. Anyways, with that being said, I want you to look into Baby Joker's his story. Listen to it and hear the similarities with Caesar Hernandez. And wherever Caesar's at, hey, run, Forrest, run. You better, homie, because if they catch you, they're going to take your win. The gun.